Sir! 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 No, no, no! Don't close your eyes. Stay with me.
An 18-year-old black girl is kneeling on the scorching concrete of a Memphis park, hands shaking, voice cracking. Her stomach hasn't had food since yesterday morning.
Just open your mouth, just a little.
The old white man slumped on the bench can barely breathe. His skin is gray. His lips are split dry. He's slipping. She pulls a napkin from her pocket. One slice of bread, the last piece of food in her entire house. She tears off a small piece and presses it to his lips. His eyes flutter open, barely.
Why? Why are you helping me?
Because nobody else is here, sir. And I'm not leaving.
She didn't know it yet, but that one small act, that one slice of bread, was about to change everything she'd ever known. But before any of that happened, before the limousine, before the stranger, before everything changed, you need to understand just how little Layla Wilson had, and how much she still managed to give. South Memphis, Tennessee, late July. If you've never been to this part of the city, let me paint it for you. Half the houses on the block are boarded up. The sidewalks are cracked so deep that weeds grow through them like little green fists punching up from the ground. The streetlights flicker on and off like they can't decide whether this neighborhood is worth lighting up anymore. The ice cream truck stopped coming years ago. Layla Wilson lives on this block, has lived here her whole life. A sagging shotgun house with chipped white paint, a porch that groans every time you step on it, and a screen door that hasn't latched properly since 2019. She lives with her grandmother, Opal Wilson, 71 years old. Hands that have worked every day of their life, sorting donations at the local Goodwill warehouse, scrubbing church floors on Saturdays, folding other people's clothes so her granddaughter could have a roof over her head. Opal raised Layla since she was 3. Layla's mother passed when Layla was barely old enough to remember her face. Complications from untreated diabetes, no insurance, no money for the medication that might have saved her. She was 31. Layla's father left 6 months later. No note, no phone call, just gone. So it was Opal. It was always Opal, but Opal's knees were giving out. Some mornings she couldn't even stand without gripping the edge of the bed. She'd been missing shifts at Goodwill, 1 week, 2 weeks, and every missed shift meant another bill that didn't get paid. On the refrigerator in their kitchen, held up by a little magnet shaped like a cross, was a disconnection notice from the electric company. 14 days to pay. The paper was already 10 days old. And the refrigerator behind that notice? Almost empty. A half-used bottle of ketchup, some baking soda, a few condiment packets from fast food restaurants that Layla had saved. That was it. But here's the thing about Layla Wilson, and this is important. She never complained. Not once. Every single morning, Layla would get up before her grandmother. She'd walk into that bare kitchen, open the bread bag, and make 2 slices, one for herself, one for Opal. Sometimes with a thin layer of peanut butter, sometimes with just margarine, sometimes with nothing at all. She'd wrap Opal's slice in a paper towel, set it on the nightstand beside her grandmother's bed, and leave for school without making a sound. That was their ritual. Unspoken. Sacred. Layla was 18 now. A senior at Westwood High, quiet, observant, the kind of girl who held the door for strangers and never expected a thank you. The kind who noticed when a classmate didn't have lunch and would slide half of hers across the table without saying a word. Her school counselor, Desmond Cole, once told Opal at a parent-teacher meeting, "Mrs. Wilson, your granddaughter has more empathy in her little finger than most adults I've ever met." Opal just smiled. That's how we raised her. But Layla had a secret world, too. She carried a small sketchbook everywhere, tucked into her backpack, pulled out on the bus, opened during lunch. She drew portraits of people in the neighborhood, the man who sold fruit from a cooler on the corner, the woman who sat on her porch every evening and sang hymns to nobody in particular, the kids who played basketball with a milk crate nailed to a telephone pole. She drew them all, carefully, lovingly, like she was saying, "I see you, you matter." And in the back of that sketchbook, on a page she never showed anyone, she drew something else. Dream versions of her life. A house with a garden, a kitchen with a full fruit bowl, Grandma Opal sitting in a rocking chair, smiling, not wincing. And at the bottom of the page, a quote she'd copied from the church bulletin board. "The Lord sees what is done in secret." Because Layla had a dream. She wanted to be an architect, someone who builds things. Not just buildings, but spaces that make people feel safe, feel seen, feel like they belong. She didn't talk about it much. Dreams feel fragile when you're not sure where your next meal is coming from. But she held on to it, quietly, the way you hold a candle in the wind, cupping your hands around the flame so it doesn't go out. Every Saturday, Layla volunteered at the food pantry run by Pastor Elaine Briggs at their neighborhood church. She stacked cans, sorted bags, carried boxes for elderly neighbors who couldn't lift them. And here's the part that gets me. Layla qualified to receive food from that pantry. She and Opal both did. But she never took a single bag. Pastor Briggs asked her once, "Sweetheart, you know this is for you too, right?" Layla just shook her head. Other people need it worse. 18 years old, empty fridge at home, and she said other people need it worse. On her walk to the pantry, Layla always passed through Douglas Park, a small, tired park with a neglected pond and a row of old benches. She liked to sit on one particular bench and sketch the water. She never paid attention to the small brass plaque on the backrest. It was faded, half hidden under peeling green paint. If she had looked closely, she would have read, "Donated by the Hargrove Foundation, 1988. But she didn't. Not yet. And that bench, that quiet, forgotten little bench, was about to become the most important place in her life. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Layla saw him, and something about the way he was sitting told her this wasn't someone resting. This was someone giving up. But let me back up a little. That morning started like every other morning in the Wilson house, except worse. Opal had a rough night, coughing, joints swollen. She barely slept. When Layla came into the kitchen, she found her grandmother already sitting at the table, hunched over, rubbing her knees with both hands. "Morning, Grandma. I'll make your bread." Opal shook her head. "I'm not hungry, baby. You eat." She was lying. Layla knew it. Opal always said she wasn't hungry when there wasn't enough. It was her way of making sure Layla ate. Layla opened the bread bag. 2 slices left, the last 2. She stood there for a moment, staring at them. Then she made 1 slice with the last scraping of peanut butter, pressed the knife so hard against the jar that it squeaked, and wrapped it in a napkin for Opal's nightstand. The second slice, plain, she folded into another napkin and tucked it into her pocket. "For later," she told herself. But there was no later. There was nothing else, no backup, no emergency stash. After this, the bread bag was empty. The pantry was empty. The fridge was empty. That was it. Schools were out for summer, so Layla didn't have anywhere to be. She thought about going to the corner store to see if Mr. Tatum needed help sweeping. He sometimes paid her a few dollars. But it was too early. The store didn't open until noon. So she grabbed her sketchbook and walked to Douglas Park. Late July in Memphis is brutal. 95 degrees by midday. The air so thick and heavy it feels like breathing through a wet towel. The kind of heat that makes the pavement shimmer. The kind that kills people every summer. Mostly the elderly, mostly the poor, mostly the ones nobody checks on. Layla walked a familiar path through the park, past the rusted swing set, past the pond with its greenish water, toward her bench. But someone was already there. An old man, white, gaunt, slumped sideways against the armrest like he'd been placed there and forgotten. His skin was pale, not just light, but pale. The kind of pale that means something is wrong. A thin line of sweat ran down his temple, even though he was wearing a wool cardigan in the middle of July. A wool cardigan. In 95-degree heat. His eyes were half closed. His breathing was shallow. Quick, uneven little gasps that didn't sound like enough. A wooden walking cane lay on the ground beside the bench, fallen like it had slipped from his hand. Layla stopped walking. Her first instinct was fear. She was an 18-year-old black girl, alone in a park, and this was a stranger, an old white man she'd never seen before. Everything in her told her to keep moving. Mind your business. Don't get involved. But then she heard it. A sound. Low, rattling, like air being dragged through a throat that didn't want to let it pass. And fear turned into something else. She stepped closer, slowly, her sneakers crunching on the dry grass. "Sir! Sir, are you okay?" No response, just that terrible breathing. She knelt down beside the bench. His face was right there, close enough to see the deep lines around his eyes, the cracked lips, the way his jaw was slack. His hand was trembling on his knee, not shaking from cold, trembling from weakness. And then she noticed something. His wallet was lying open on the bench beside him. No cash inside, just a faded photograph, a woman with kind eyes, and a business card face down half tucked under his leg. Layla didn't touch it, didn't even think about it. But she noticed something else, too. Something that didn't quite fit. His shoes. They were leather Oxfords, dark brown, scuffed and dusty from walking, but the stitching was fine. The soles were thick. These weren't shoes from Goodwill. These were shoes that cost more than Opal's monthly rent. And the cardigan, the one that made no sense in this heat, had a small monogram stitched into the left cuff. 2 letters. She couldn't read them from where she was kneeling. She didn't try. None of it mattered right now. What mattered was that this man was in trouble. Serious trouble. His skin was hot to the touch. His breathing was getting slower. She'd seen these signs before. Pastor Briggs taught a first aid session at church last summer. Heat stroke, dehydration, maybe worse. She needed to cool him down. She needed to get him water. She needed to do something. But she had no phone, no water bottle, no money, nothing. Nothing except a single slice of plain bread in her pocket. Her stomach growled, a long, low sound she couldn't hide. She looked at the bread. She looked at the man. And what Layla did next would cost her the only meal she had left. She didn't think. She just moved. Layla jumped to her feet and ran toward the park's water fountain, the old one near the swing set, the one that barely worked. She pressed the button. A thin, pathetic trickle of warm water sputtered out. She cupped her hands underneath it. Waited. The water filled her palms slowly, so slowly. And then she turned and ran back to the bench. Half the water spilled before she got there. It leaked through her fingers, dripped down her wrists, left a trail of dark